All right, gang, what we're going to do is go through the remainder of the code. We're going to cover the three remaining classes. We talked about the Android manifest.xml file. We talked about the strings.xml. You could take a look at the styles if you want to. I like you to do your own styles. But here's the styles that I'm using, the colors, XML, and I've used that in several different applications. I'm not using these here per se for this application, but you can reference these files if you want to. I'm actually using other colors for the applications you can see right here. Okay, we talked about the items activity and the associated XML file, activity underscore items. We talked about the item activity class and the associated XML file, activity underscore item.xml. Remember, when we create our classes, it's going to create an associated XML file. We also talked about the file IO class, and I'm going to close out of this right now and close out of this. We talked about the file IO class in a previous video. Now we're going to talk about the three remaining ones: RSS Feed, RSS Feed Handler, and RSS Item. So I'm in the RSS Feed class right now, and we're going to take a look at the import statements. There's a package that we're using, newsreader. Here are the import statements for exceptions, simple date format, array list, date, and suppress lint. We'll talk about lint, and really all it is just to find errors that must be fixed. But sometimes we have to suppress the functionality of lint because there may not be a problem. It depends upon the context of what we're using. And here you're going to see that we're using a date format. We need to suppress that because we're going to be formatting in a particular fashion. Again, I'm using Java documentation or comments. Here to say lint provides code scanning tool. Android Studio actually provides that, and it can help identify and correct problems. But problem is, it can identify problems that may need to be fixed, but also can flag ones that don't need to be fixed. And so what we can do is suppress the lint functionality by indicating what don't we want fixed. And here, what we don't want being worked with or messed with is this simple date format class. So we're going to suppress any errors associated with that class. The class here is public class RSS feed. Again, the name as the file. And here we have 4 data members, actually, private data members. And the 3 here are for the title, publication date, and the actual array list of RSS items. And then we're going to format the item in a particular fashion. And so you can just do an internet search on the simple date format class and see how these options are being used here. And what it'll do, it'll look like this. When I click on here, this is actually the format here. The day, 2-digit day, 3-digit name day, 2-digit number day, 3-digit month, year, hours, minutes, seconds, and the time zone, GMT. Okay, so that Z stands for zone, time zone. You can, again, go check the internet and do a quick search on the simple date format class right here. Okay? I think I get all the rest of this code in one last viewing. So we're going to, because you know that a constructor has the same name in the class. The class here is RSS Feed. Our constructor is RSS Feed, and it's going to It's a default constructor, and what it's going to do is instantiate a new array list with an RSS item, and those items will be passed into a variable called items. We have several different methods. One is going to be the setTitle method, getTitle method. Remember the convention, gang, for beans. It's the same convention we're using here. So notice we used title, private data member, and pub date, lowercase pub. For the methods, remember that the first, outside of the set and get or keywords, we're going to use the capitalization of the first letter of each word being capitalized. So set title, get title, set pub date, get pub date. Notice the capitalization. And then here, what we're going to do is get the pub date in milliseconds, and it's going to be returned as a long. So we're going to use a try-catch block. We're going to try to get the pub date. We're using the trim method here, and all that trim method does is it removes any white space from the publication date. It removes that white space on either end, the left side and the right side. So we're going to have a get pub date millisecond method with a try-catch block to get the time. If there's an error for whatever reason, what we're going to do is catch that error, and then we're going to add the item. That is the RSS item. Remember, we're using an array list, not an array. So an array list is a special type of class, actually a data structure, that we have to use methods like add and remove to use them. We're not using we're not using conventional arrays in how we work with each element. We're using methods to work with the elements to add or remove them. The difference being is that the arrays are a static, fixed size array, whereas an array list is what's known as a dynamic array, and so it can grow or shrink as needed. So we're going to add the item there, whatever RSS item is there. We're going to add it, and then we're going to get the size of that particular array list and see what it is, get the size, and then we're going to here get the item, use the get item method, and then we're going to return an RSS item. So remember, this is a value returning method, and we must return the type of value that was indicated in the signature. Now really, this would be on a separate line, right? But to make it easier to read, we just put it on the one line like this. So that's really how you would normally see it, right? And realize this is, if it doesn't say void, it's a value returning method. And what value is this method returning? Well, it's returning an RSS item. And what we have to do then is make sure that it returns an RSS item. We're going to get an index of that particular item, whatever it is. So whatever the index is, just for grins and giggles, we could say this is the first one, so that would be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 elements here, but this would be index 0, 1, 2. Always remember there's one fewer index than the number of items. Okay, next is we have an array list here, and that is going to get all the items that are in that particular list, and as a matter of fact, in that particular RSS feed. And there's the end of our class. That's the end of our RSS feed class. Let me make that a little bit smaller so you can see the whole class in context. There it is, right there. You should be able to see all the, well, I guess not. Now you should be able to see all the code right there. Okay, that's all the code I discussed. All you have to do is pause it. Let's go to the, that's RSS feed. Let's go to RSS feed handler. And here is the, oops, let me just save that. Here is the RSS feed handler right here. Let's go to the import statement. And here, let me make this a little bit larger. Here's where we're going to use our SACs. And again, that stands for Simple API for XML. And we're going to use that. And there we go. Okay. So we're going to get the SACs classes. There's our package. There's our import statements for SACs. Again, simple API for XML. And it will parse the XML into Java objects. And here's exactly what this class is going to do. It's going to get the RSS feed. It's going to find the start and end of the elements. So in other words, to capture the item, title, description, link, and publication date. And so here's our class. We have some private data members. And if you want, I could put this right here like this so you can see the curly bracket. There's a class. Private data members, RSS feed. Its feed is a variable of type RSS feed. Item is a variable of type RSS item. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Boolean variables. That means they can be either true or false, and the default is false. So for the feed title has been read, feed publication date has been read. Set that to false. Is title, is description, is link, is pub date. All right. Now we have a default. We have a method called getFeed, and it should return a type of RSS feed. So when we get the feed, it should be a feed. That's what it should return. We're going to use the override method here to start processing the document, and if there is an exception, it's going to be a SACs, Simple API for XML exception. And what's going to happen when we start the document is get the new SSR feed and the new item for that feed, each one. Now I want to talk about here, because we're using the variable called QName, and I want to talk about what QName is. It's just, QName stands for qualified name. We could have called the variable anything, but Q, capital N-A-M-E, is just a variable, and it stands for qualified name. And all that does is checks to see if the element is actually needed by the app. Now, the only elements that we're getting are item, title, description, and date. We're also getting link as well, too. But if it's not part of that, then we're not going to get that particular element. Let me change my spelling here. Not element, but element. And so if the qualified name equals item, we're going to get that item. If it's a title, we're going to set is title to true. If it's description, we're going to set is description to true. If it's a link, we're going to set is link to true. And finally, if the qualified name is publication date. And by the way, these are special elements inside of an RSS feed. So you can have item is a special element for an RSS feed. Title, description, link, and pub date. That's how your RSS feeds are actually well formed. There's a specification when creating RSS feeds, and all our RSS feeds have to meet that specification. Much like working with XML or HTML or CSS, whatever, there's a specification, and it has to adhere to a particular syntax. Anyway, this is the conditional statement here, and what it's doing is it's actually reading through the start of an element, and so it's passing or I should say capturing, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 attributes that this method will accept, and that is the namespace for the URI, the local name, the qualified name, and all the attributes associated with it. And so what it's just going to do is only look for item, title, description, link, and pub date. Nothing else will be looked for in the RSS feed. Okay, now that's a start element. Here's the end element. And that end element is just looking for the if the Q name equals item, then we're going to add the item to the feed. Now remember that feed variable right here is here. We're saying that we're going to have a variable called feed of type RSS feed. So if now again, we're going to call this method end element. We're looking for the start of an element and an end of an element. And we're looking for here the 3 parameters instead of 4. They're all the same. Notice as namespace URI, string locale name, and string Q name. But the only thing different for the start element is the parameter for all the attributes. If it finds qualified name for item, it's going to add that item to the RSS feed and then return the value. Next, because both the feed and each item contain a title and pub, not poob, but pub, not to use, but pub, date, because both the feed and each item contain the elements of title and pub date, they must be parsed. So in the feed, we're looking to find out if the title and pub date were captured. If not, we're going to then set it to false. If it has been, we're going to set it to true. So here we go. Here is the method called characters, and I could put this like this to make it easier to read. The method characters takes 3 parameters, a char array, an int start parameter, and an int length parameter. Okay. Next, we're going to create a string, and the string is going to contain the char array, the start and length of that particular number of characters. So if isTitle is true, isTitle is a Boolean variable. If isTitle is true, and if the feed title has been read, we're going to if the feed title has been read is equal to false, then we're going to set the title. And then after we set the title to the RSS feed, we're going to say that feed title has been read, true. Else, set the title on the element. So what does that mean? Here is the feed title right here. Okay? Going to Ecuador, 11 things travelers should know first. Here is the item title. So here, this item is the same name as that, but what we're doing is making sure that it's associated not with the feed itself, but when we pass the particular item in this array list, when we pass this specific item in the array list, we want to make sure that we're capturing this title over here, and that if it hasn't been read, we're going to make sure that it's read in the array list. If isTitle is true, and if feed title has been read as false, we're going to set the feed title. Else, we're going to set the item title, and then set isTitle assign false to isTitle. We're going to do the same thing with isLink. Else, if isLink is true. We're going to set isLink and then set isLink to false. And now here for isDescription, we're looking for the beginning of an element. Now remember, just like your HTML gang, if it starts with the left angle bracket, that means it's a beginning of an element. If the s.start, in other words, this string here, s, dot starts with a left angle bracket, that means it's a beginning of an element. Set the description to no description available. Else, if not, then we're going to set the description. And the description is here. This is the description. Ecuador sits astride the equator, blah, blah, blah. And then set the isDescription variable to false. Do the same thing with isPubDate. So if isPubDate is true, if pubDate has been read equals false, we're going to set the pubDate to the feed, else the pubDate is assigned true, or I should say, let me take that back here. If the feed pubDate has been read equals false, we're going to then make sure that we set the pubDate for the feed. Again, the feed is the array list here. Set it to the feed. And then we're going to set feed pubDate has been read to true. Else, what we're going to do is then set it to the item pubDate, and then set isPubDate for the, we're going to set this variable here to false after we read it for the feed and for the item. Same thing here for the description. If it's true, we're going to capture it and then set isDescription to false. We do that with each one of these variables. Okay, and that is the end of this class, the RSS Feed Handler. The handler means that it will handle when the RSS feed there has been some type of action performed on the feed, pulling it in, etc. And this is the code for that. So this is the RSS Feed Handler. Go to the top. Here's that, the class. You can take a look at the private data members, the get feed method, start document method, and then the start element method. This is all the code for start element. And then finally, or I should say, and then the end element, and then finally the characters method. And that is right here. And then lastly, the end of the RSS feed handler class. Lastly is the RSS item class. All right, here's all the data, or I should say here's all the code, and I'm going to make it a little bit larger. That should be large enough for you to see. And then I'm going to show the imports. All right. Here we're using the annotation again, suppress lint, parse exception. Here's our package. Import the parse exception, simple date format, and the date class. Here the class stores data for each item in the RSS feed. That is the item's title, description, link, and pub date that's formatted. We're going to suppress the lint like we did in the RSS feed handler, so that it's going to suppress any issues that may be affected by the simple date format class. Here is the RSS class definition with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 private data members for title, description, length, and pub date. Simple pub date for the date out format and the date in format. Notice there's two different dates here. Notice there's two different formattings of dates. Okay, so for the date out format and for the date in format. Next, we have methods, getter and setter methods for set title, get title. Remember, we have our private data members and public member functions to get and set those private data members. Set title, get title. Set description, get description. Set link, get link. Set pub date, get pub date. And then finally what we want to do is format that. So get pub date formatted. We're going to try block. We're going to instantiate a date object variable, and we're going to use the trim method to eliminate any white space on the left-hand side or right-hand side of the date. Then we're going to for the date in variable. Let's see. Here we go. Date in variable right here. And for the date out format, we're going to format the date as well according to how we formatting here on line 21 and line 23. So a date object. Now here the pub date formatted is a string, and we're going to return because this method is the signature is string. It's a value returning method. It's going to return a string. We have to then make sure that we are returning a string. And you can see the pub date formatted variable is a string variable, and we're going to return a string. If there's an error, it's going to catch that and indicate the error. Finally, the end of the class and end of the let's see, my apologies. End of the method, get pub date formatted method, and end of the class right there. Okay? All right, that's it. Let me make it a little bit smaller so you can see everything. And that is it, gang. That's all the code you have there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes. You have 1, 2, 3 XML layout files, and you have a strings file that I talked about in a previous video, and finally the Android manifest file that I also talked about at the beginning in the first video. Okay? Alright, gang, that is it. And let me just make this a little bit smaller so you can see all the code. Yes, right there. All right, gang, if you have any questions, please post them to the discussion board. And like I said, your application should look like this. Make sure that you're pulling in a different RSS channel that I'm demonstrating here, and then when you click on it, it will actually show that particular item, and then the user can actually navigate to the URL using the default browser from the particular mobile device in which it is located. All right, gang, if you have any questions, please post them to the discussion board, and see you all in class.